Thanks to Bespoke Post for sponsoring this video. Welcome to Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things that you might have missed in Hawkeye, Episode 5, Ronin. I know, everybody wants to get into that big ending, and we will, but first we have a lot of Easter eggs and ground to cover. The episode opens in 2018 with sounds from the Black Widow movie.
Agent to chemical subjugation. Antidote controlio senaz.
He had widows implanted all over the world. You should be the one to tell him it's over.
Just in case you haven't seen Black Widow, it reveals that this woman, Yelena Belova, was raised alongside Natasha as a spy in America. Years later, Natasha defected, but Yelena and hundreds of other young girls were mind-controlled to be assassins, called the Black Widows. The movie ends with Yelena leaving to free all the women around the world who were being mind-controlled, and all of this takes place between Civil War and Infinity War. And I like this little audio montage ends with a whistle, because this is how Natasha and Yelena would call out to one another. This whole episode is like Yelena whistling for Natasha into the void, but she can't answer. Then we cut to Yelena and Sonya breaking into the home of Anna to liberate her with the same gas that we saw in Black Widow, only to find out that she's not mind-controlled and she's doing okay for herself.
How can you afford all of this?
Killing for money.
Santos 2 Isaias on Twitter pointed out that the theme from Black Widow, Natasha's Lullaby, is playing when Yelena and Sonya invade the mansion. It's a great catch. Also, Yelena got a new vest. Isn't that great? I mean, she loved the old one.
Has a lot of pockets. It's so cool, right?
It's good.
Sonya says,
And then you and Natasha will be reunited and go live your Sex in the City fantasy in New York.
and God, that's sad. Yelena probably saw all of Natasha's time in New York as some kind of fantasy, a dream life that she was working toward for years, and they never got to live it together. But then again, you know, around this time, Nat was on the run from the law, so, I mean, maybe that's why Yelena gets sad, because she and Natasha will never be able to live this fantasy. And you see this bust on the table behind her? That's depicting an ancient Marvel character from the Eternals. That's your mom. Then we see her get dusted from the snap in Infinity War. Now this is actually the first time we've seen the snap entirely from the point of view of the dusted person. Here it serves an important function. It roots us in Yelena's point of view for the duration of the episode. And it's so cool how this happens. I've watched this like 10 times. Yelena is dusted, but then immediately reforms. But we see this from her point of view, meaning that she remembers being dusted, just like Peter Parker implied.
Do you remember when we were in space and I got all dusty?
But notice that from her point of view, the entire world is dusted as she returns. Her environment has to slowly change. Now these walls were painted during the blip, so instead of just reappearing in a room with painted walls, she watches as reality has to reassemble around her. Here's what I find so fascinating about this. It implies that the dusted were not simply blipped out of existence. They were placed in some other plane of reality, and their return to this time and place is not instantaneous. It takes the universe a while to place them back inside this reality at the correct time and place, which is why she's able to observe her environment changing. It also explains why people were returned at the exact spot on Earth, regardless of where Earth was sitting in its rotation around the sun. Otherwise, people would have returned to the vacuum of space. So this is like for 5 years she was inside a stasis bubble, and that bubble has to slowly reconfigure where she belongs in the universe, like she's being fast-forwarded through time. So this means that everyone who was blipped was able to briefly observe reality from a different plane of existence. It also makes me think that one of the reasons Monica Rambeau was able to gain abilities after going in and out of the hex so many times was because she had already been blipped. Her atoms had already been transformed and reconfigured. Well, anyways, after the initial shock wears off, Anna tries to get Yelena into the assassin for hire business like it's some kind of pyramid scheme.
You can start with contract work, and then you can stay here as long as you need.
You see, Yelena, every time you recruit an assassin, you get a bonus for their kills. And when they recruit someone else, you get a bonus for their kills, and up it goes. But all she wants to do is see her sister, Natasha.
I need to find Natasha.
Back to the present day, Eleanor is patching up Kate just like Clint did in episode 2. But instead of indulging her hero worship like Clint did, Eleanor is more pragmatic and tells her to stop. She reminded me a lot of Megan Draper's mother in Mad Men.
Not every little girl gets to do what they want. The world could not support that many ballerinas.
Kate responds with,
I really thought I could be one of them.
which goes back to the series theme of hero worship. In episode 1, we had Rogers the Musical, a way for people to live vicariously through the Avengers' lives. Then the LARPers.
You're a superhero in real life. This is as close as I'm ever gonna get to being one.
Every one of these people, including Kate Bishop, wants to live this extraordinary life, to be one of them. But Grills is already a hero, a firefighter. Kate is already a very brave and talented young woman. And the audience for Rogers the Musical actually had to walk through Times Square, which is an Elmo-filled hellhole. All these people are already heroes. Then we cut to Maya Lopez being patched up by Kazi. So this directly parallels Kate, who is also being cared for by someone that she trusts who turns out to betray her. Maya is also getting her own Disney Plus show, Echo, which is why she's a lot more nuanced than your average Marvel villain. But I'll talk more about her and the Kingpin reveal later in the end of this video. Kazi tells her that after they kill Ronin, she has to stop her revenge quest because he doesn't want her to figure out that he was involved in the murder. Kate returns to her apartment and dear God, do you see that? Those are hexagons. Hexagons! Not the beast! Ah! And one thing I love about this show is that Hawkeye always has the best.
Excuse me, person, I'm thirsty.
Oh, yeah, sure thing, buddy. Here you go. Do you guys like this combination dog bowl and water bottle? I got it from when we take Doug on hikes. And I got it from Bespoke Post, the sponsor of this video. Now we've talked about Bespoke Post on the channel before. This is a terrific monthly membership club that sends me a box of top shelf goods every month. But now, in addition to the monthly subscriptions that we always talk about, you can purchase individual items on their site for the holidays. For instance, they also sent me this sweet U-Keg Go, a 64-ounce carbonated mini keg that keeps your beverages fresh. They offer everything from clothes, barware, kitchen goods, outdoor gear, and lots more. They even sell live oysters. This is a great place to shop for loved ones who are hard to shop for. And I know that everyone is worried about the supply chain slowing down shipped items, but Bespoke Post products are in stock and ready to ship. They have so many products that can actually be overwhelming, so I've actually curated some of my favorite products on my curated collection page, like this classy wine cooler bag. There's also this Zero mini pocket speaker or this cocktail smoking kit. So we've got a special deal for Screen Crush fans. To get 15% off everything in my personal collection, click the link in the description and enter the code ScreenCrush15 at checkout. Or go to bspk.me/ScreenCrush15. Back to the Easter eggs. Yelena has made mac and cheese, her favorite when she was a kid.
I want mac and cheese.
Oh, you want mac and cheese? Okay, well.
And she also says,
Take a fork, eat. Eat, please. My daddy says it's good for you.
Referencing Alexei the Red Guardian. Now this implies that Melina, Yelena's spy mom, was always trying to get her to eat nutritious food, while her dad was the one who was always indulging how much she actually liked to eat junk like mac and cheese. Pretty much fits in with the character dynamics that we see play out in that movie. Yelena talks to Kate about New York and the Sex and the City dream that Sonia mentioned earlier, but just in case you don't know what she's talking about, she is not talking about doing a lot of screwing in New York. Sex and the City was an HBO show about an upper crust blogger living her best life with her 3 colorful friends.
You are totally a Carrie.
And you, my friend, are Miranda. Wouldn't it be great if we did Sex and the City breakdowns? We should do that. Yelena also says,
The new and improved Statue of Liberty?
Now, this is interesting because, as we've seen in the Spider-Man No Way Home trailers, they are adding Captain America's shield to the statue. And in the trailers, we also see the shield being damaged and falling off the statue. So that movie takes place before Hawkeye, meaning that they did finish adding in the shield. After Yelena talks about Rudolph, she drops the funniest line of the series.
Have you ever eaten reindeer?
This is hilarious, but it also reveals so much about Yelena's character. She lived in America in a kind of Disneyland dream life, but she was raised in Russia with harsh, brutal truths. Like sometimes you gotta eat Rudolph to survive.
Okay, wow, that was very Russian.
And here's another character reveal moment. When Kate says that Clint is an Avenger, she says,
What does that word even mean, huh?
Now this is a very layered line. As I said before, the show is about hero worship. People hear that someone is an Avenger and that automatically elevates them into something more than human. But Tony Stark's hands are covered in blood, and so are Clint's, Nat's. Steve lied to Tony about how his parents were killed. Every Avenger, except for Vision, is a damaged person who has made huge mistakes and done really bad things. But that label, Avenger, seems to excuse them in the eyes of the public. But this word has no mysticism for Yelena. As far as she's concerned, being an Avenger got her sister killed. I'm also curious to see where this leads Yelena. She worked for Val, and Val also recruited John Walker. So I assume they're forming some kind of team, like the Thunderbolts or the Dark Avengers. If Yelena joins this team, then to her it'll be just a job, not because she thinks that being part of a group of extraordinary entities entitles her to feeling superior. She says,
We are defined by what we do, not by nice words.
Exactly. Rogers the Musical isn't just a random Easter egg. It keeps bringing the theme of the show to the forefront. This musical is people using words to control the narrative of who the Avengers are, how they're remembered. But the truth about these people and their mistakes is a lot more complicated. Clint goes to crash with Grills, a character that he became close to in the comics, and Pizza Dog is a good boy, a very good boy.
I can do Dancy Dance too.
Yes, I know you can. Kate comes home to find that Jacques is being arrested. Now, I see one of two possibilities here. One, that Eleanor really has framed him and he's just an actual dumbass. Or two, and far more likely, there is no way these are real cops.
I was acting. Or was I?
This was all set up for Kate's benefit. That's why they're conveniently arresting him right when she gets home.
I've obviously been framed. I'll clear all this up and be back in a jiffy for your Christmas party. You'll see.
Then Clint goes to visit the memorial of the Battle of New York, commemorating this moment. Now, I like that they used Thor's full name, Thor Odinson, and they included the Avengers logo here. Clint uses this moment to speak to Natasha about their endgame fight, the Soul Stone, and most importantly, to apologize.
I'm so sorry for what I'm about to do.
Well, I'm not really sure what he's apologizing for. He doesn't go off and kill anyone. Alan Ashall on Twitter points out that the music here matches the score of their final scene in Endgame.
I've replayed that a million times in my head, hoping for a different outcome. Please no.
Kate wakes up in her room out of focus because, at this point, she really doesn't know who she is anymore. She was so focused on her childhood dream of becoming a superhero, and now she's not so sure about herself. But when she looks at that tiny bow, she remembers who she really is, who she's always been, and suddenly she comes into focus. The Tracksuit Mafia are driving around in their bro van, a nod to how they always say bro in the comics, and they're talking about why they think tracksuits are cool, mentioning Run DMC. And by the way, DMC is a huge comic fan who writes his own comics. They also name drop Tony Soprano.
Tony Soprano, forget about it.
What's the matter?
And the Royal Tenenbaums, which is my favorite reference in the show.
Royal Tenenbaums? Come on. Do we look like Royal Tenenbaums? Yes.
Minucho NQ on Twitter points out that the song they're listening to is the same one the limo driver listens to in Die Hard.
Hey, that'll work.
Because these are both Christmas stories. So Clint calls Laura and they tease the last big mystery of the show. What is up with Laura Barton's past? The watch somehow connects to her, Clint, Ronin, and their lives as spies. At least I assume that she was a spy. In the comics, Clint married a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent turned superhero, Bobby Morse, aka Mockingbird. So I am positive that Laura used to be in the life.
Clint, we've been so careful, really.
And then there's also this.
And know that I'll always understand more than anybody else ever could.
Implying that maybe Linda Cardellini was the original Ronin. Let me know your Laura Barton theories down in the comments. Then Clint goes off to take down the tracksuits peacefully. I loved how this was shot, like a horror movie, because the Ronin would have been a boogeyman to criminals around the world. The fight takes place at Fat Man Auto, another big hint that Kingpin was the man behind everything. The Dursy Durs on Twitter points out that there's an 85 station wagon selling for 23 grand. A pretty clear sign that this business is a front.
What? Child. Anyway, so
Nando V Movies on Twitter pointed out that Clint escaping in an Uber that Kate ordered is taken directly from her LA story in the comics. Nando also has a great YouTube channel that you should really check out. In the comics, Maya actually was the original Ronin before Clint took over the role. Again, kind of implying that Laura Barton was the Ronin first. After their fight, Clint tells her, "Your boss wanted your father dead."
Your boss wanted your father dead.
And now we know that her boss is none other than Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin of crime. Now we have a video coming out tomorrow that explains who Wilson Fisk is and his connection to Daredevil and how they all connect to Hawkeye and Spider-Man No Way Home. But in case you haven't seen Daredevil, Kingpin is this figure who controls the entire underworld of New York. Also, this Kingpin reveal is taken partially from the comics. For the past few weeks, well actually really since the first trailer dropped, we've speculated that Kingpin was going to appear in the show. There were a lot of clues. First of all, in the comics, Kingpin runs the Tracksuit Mafia, and Kate's father is a criminal who works for him. Kingpin also has a deep past connection with Maya in the comics. Her father was an assassin who worked for Kingpin, and just like in the show, the Kingpin had him killed so he could control Maya's gifts, and he set someone else up to take the blame. Also in the comics, the Kingpin had a hand in raising her, just like in this show, because he was more than likely the uncle figure that we see here. This guy even has cufflinks like Fisk loved to wear.
That's why I still wear these. To remind myself that I'm not cruel for the sake of cruelty. that I'm not my father.
We've also been speculating since episode 1 that Eleanor was going to be a secret bad guy. And not just because Kate's dad is a crook in the comics, there were other hints. Her argument with Armand, where he says that her entire empire is built on a lie and he knows what he saw. Chances are, he saw her with Wilson Fisk. There was also the way that she didn't seem too bothered when there were explosions during the watch robbery. And later on, it definitely seems like she knew what happened and she's trying to get Kate to admit that she was there.
That was crazy. An explosion? Some kind of black market auction?
Then there was her mysterious call in the last episode, which was probably to Val. And if you're wondering why Eleanor makes this call in the winter and Val gives Yelena the assignment when there are still leaves on the trees, it's because global warming makes it warmer in Ohio. Also, Eleanor is always wearing the color of the tracksuits, red, and even asked Kate to do the same.
Why don't you start making it up to me by putting on that red dress in your bedroom and coming with me tonight?
And a lot of people online pointed out this painting of a woman in a red dress with a kind of faint face, hinting that Eleanor could be some kind of hidden nemesis or Kate's archenemy, Madame Mask. Even this line.
Sometimes the paths we're on, they wind around in ways that we never would have expected.
I mean, every word out of this woman's mouth was a clue. When we do finally see the Kingpin of crime, he is wearing his classic white suit and holding a cane, just like he did in the comics. Maybe he never recovered from the last beatdown that Daredevil gave him. I am so excited to see Kingpin return in the show. I love the way he looms over these end credits too, like he's always been there. Vincent D'onofrio has always been one of my favorite Marvel villains, and I cannot wait to see where this goes. But that's just everything that we found. Let me know if you saw anything in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.